We're almost to the end of the Sazerac knit sweater. Stick with me and I'm going to show you how to finish this thing up. Let's go. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sazerac Cable Knit Sweater. We are coming to the very end of this sweater and I'm super excited that we get to finish it up in no time here. You're gonna see it's gonna finish in no time and you'll be able to wear this by this weekend. I'm just fairly certain of it. Okay, in this video, we are going to discuss the neckline. We are going to talk about doing the Kitchener stitch to graft together our shoulders. And we're going to talk about mattress stitch or whip stitching underneath our sleeves. This is a pretty robust video and I'm going to try and just keep going through it as quickly as I possibly can. But as always, if you need to hit pause for any reason to catch up with where I am in the video, please feel free to do so. I can only go as quickly as I can go, and your project is bigger than the sample I'm working on, so I know you're gonna have to hit pause every now and again, but that's cool. That's what I'm here for. Okay, by this point, you should have the next set of your instructions right there in front of you. If you are part of the VIP, make sure you have the full pattern, all the charts, and we're going to dive in with our homework and talk about what the next step is. Let's go. And here is the sample sweater, and here is the lovely neckline we're going to be working on. Something I want to point out about this neckline is that you can see clearly that I wanted the neckline as large as the two larger cables on either side of our center large cable, right? My whole goal when I was designing this was to make it so that these cables came up. You no longer did any sort of extra stitches for those, or didn't, let me rephrase that. You no longer cable all the way up here. I wanted to change that to seed stitch, and then I wanted to change all of this to seed stitch so it matched the sleeves and my hem. So when I designed this, I was like, great, I want to make sure that we're coming up to where the cables come to an end. It's a really good ending point, and I continue on with seed stitch. The pre-planning for that really coincided with what I did over here for the sleeve, where I wanted the seed stitch on the side of the sleeve so that way it wasn't curled up on me. It didn't require any extra finishing. Once you reach this section of the sweater, you will notice that you will be working along and there are not any new stitches that you need to learn. It's actually going to become quite easy because you'll no longer have to do all of these cable bits that are here in the center of your sweater, right? All of those are going to change to seed stitch. And I know there are some of you out there who are thinking, I don't want my neckline that wide. So I'm going to give you the easiest way to alter your neckline. Are you ready? Instead of changing where your neckline starts out here, okay, with the seed stitch, I would just give yourself more stitches over here when it comes time to continue on with your pattern. So you'll have a set number of stitches that you are going to bind off in the middle of your work here so that you can get the front neck. And when you bind off those stitches, you'll have a set number of stitches that will remain that you then continue on with your seed stitch. What I would do is, if you don't want your seed stitch this wide and you want it to be a little bit wider so that way your neck will be a little bit narrower, that's what I would do. So instead of skipping over, let me see, I think this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it might be 6, I don't know, I don't have the pattern in front of me, but it looks like it steps over 5. Maybe you step over 6, 7, 8, 9. And so if you do that, you're going to have a really wide seed stitch, but it's still going to look really good, especially when it's matched up with all the seed stitch in the rest of your sweater. So if you're looking to change that at all, that's what I would do, is I would make this portion, this section right here of your seed stitch on the neckline. If you want a narrower neckline, just add more of those seed stitches in here. So you'll have fewer stitches that you're binding off and you'll have more stitches over here that you're going to be working up. Okay. One thing I do want to note is if you look at the back of the sweater here, it does dip down a little bit in the back of the neck. That's because anatomically, your body, your head sits a little bit forward on the body. So in order for the sweater to not just keep falling backwards and choke you, it needs a little dip in the back of the neck. So that way it rests appropriately on your shoulders. So why I'm pointing that out is so you know why that's there, but also if you're going to extend the seed stitch section here on the front, you're going to have to do the same thing on the back. Okay, you guys with me on that? Okay, you'll have to do the same thing on the back. Pretty cool. I mean, it's not super difficult to alter this neckline. It's easier to make it narrower than wider. I would highly recommend not making it wider because it's already pretty wide as it is. Otherwise it might fall off your shoulders. But I totally understand those of you who are wanting to make it a little bit narrower for sure. Okay, it's also really helpful if you are part of the VIP upgrade. As we've talked about, you have the full charts here. So you can see here, I've blocked off any rows beyond what was written. So for this one, this is the extra small, and you worked up and you did a total of 24 rows total, right? So if I move these Post-it notes, you're going to see that it's the rest of your front right here. And so you'll see row 25 as you work across, but then when you get right here to stitch number 32, you're changing everything to seed stitch. And you go seed stitch all the way over to stitch number 61, and then you're going back into your stitch pattern. So what I'm saying here is if we wanted to make this neck narrower for whatever reasons, and you can calculate how wide that neck is if you want to, but if you wanted to make it narrower, let's just use our Sharpie here. And we know, so if I'm coming up here, this is a purl, knit, this would be a purl. So I could put a dot right there. And then the next one would be a knit, and that one would be a purl. And the next one would be a knit. So that would put me at the same part there. So if I did that, what I would probably do is I would just be like, okay, so that there is my new line. So those, I've added 4 stitches. So then I can come down here and be like, okay, so that's a knit, there's a purl, there's a knit, there's a purl, and then there is my new line. So now I've just narrowed my neckline. So now my neckline goes from there to there. And if I know that on my chart, I could go in here and I could then, you know, plan out where all my purls are just by hand like this. Or if you wanted to do it in Stitch Fiddle, you could do that. The VIPers, you have the link to Stitch Fiddle, but you can see here that it's stitch number 40 all the way to 53. And so if you go to your back, this is your back panel chart, you could do the same thing and go from stitch 40 to, what stitch did I say? 53. And so go to 53 and know, okay, that is where I need to come into on the back, so that way my front and back line up. Make sense? All right. If you make a note of that on your chart, it'll make it very easy for you to do. And this works for all the different sizes. So like if I go to the extra large 2X, I can remove the Post-its from here. I can proceed the same way. Now this chart, you can see here, look at this. So this is a narrower, or it's a shallower, so it's not as deep of a neckline. It has fewer rows because it's a smaller size. This one has a deeper neckline. Same thing, if you wanted to have it so it wasn't so low, you wanted it higher. Ooh, I didn't mean to hit my microphone, sorry. If you wanted it to be a little higher, you could always just continue your seed stitch across a couple extra rows if you wanted to. And then like before, you could always cut it in and do whatever you need to do, okay? But you can see here that we worked up until, this is so small, my eyes are so bad anymore. It looks like, I can't even read the numbers. We worked up until about there, but then if you're following along with this, you can easily see how to make any changes on the front or the back. Okay, does that help you with the neckline? As far as if you want it shorter, like shallower, you could add more rows, or you could reduce the number of rows if you want. If you want a narrower neckline, like more coming in on your shoulders, you could always add more of the seed stitch along the outside. Just make sure you do it on the front and the back. Okay, so the first thing you need to do here is, whether you finished on the front or you finished on the back, or if you have 2 sets of needles going, or whatever it is that worked for you, whichever side has your needles on it, go ahead and finish that side. And then if you're going to put those on a holder, go ahead and put those on a holder. You'll notice at some point when we get to this, where it breaks apart, you're going to have stitches worked up here, right? And you'll have these on a holder. So like this is the front. So you're working across and across, across. And when we get here to where those gray, that's gray, that means there's no stitches there. That means those stitches right inside of there are going to be bound off. So you'll have these stitches over here on a holder, and then you'll just be working back and forth on this shoulder. And then you'll come back over here and you'll work back and forth on this shoulder. Just know that when you get to the top here, you are not binding off. You want those stitches to be live, because when those stitches are live here, let's see, this one is this side and this one is this side. As those stitches are live, it makes it so that way we can do a Kitchener stitch to join our front and back shoulders. So as you're working up, you're going to want to have these on a holder once you reach the top here, and you're going to want to have these on a holder once you reach the top here. So when everything is said and done, you're going to have your front shoulders on holders and your back shoulders on holders. Okay? Then you're going to move on to the next step, which is to do the Kitchener stitch. So what I need you to do now is either hit pause or do whatever you need to do to stop this video and then come back to it when you're ready for the shoulder bits. Or if you just want to watch through and then come back later, you can do that as well. Because what I want to do is I want to take both of these swatches and show you how to do the Kitchener stitch. Because if you imagine, this is on the back, it's this shoulder on the back. So these two pieces right here are simulating meeting up to be grafted together. So if we're looking at this piece, they are meeting up to be grafted together just like this. Okay, so that's why you want to have all of those shoulders live, because we want to graft those together, very much like you would do a toe of a sock. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So that's the next part I want to show you how to do. It's the Kitchener stitch with your shoulders. All right, so hit pause, join me back here for the Kitchener stitch. You have finished the front and the back of your sweater. You are ready to graft together the shoulders, and I'm ready to show you how. Let's do the Kitchener stitch. Now, I have worked up 2 little swatches to represent the back of our sweater and the front of our sweater. Yours obviously will be the same color, but I wanted you to be able to see the different colors so you could distinguish where I am when I'm working on these stitches. I am also going to use a different color yarn to do my Kitchener stitch, that way you can see that as well. Now, if you were smart enough to leave your yarn still attached to your work, whatever yarn, what ball is attached down here towards the tip of your needles, if you want to continue on with that yarn so you don't have to attach a new yarn, great, you could absolutely do that. If you have already cut your yarn like I did mine, you could do exactly what I'm going to do. Regardless of whether your yarn is attached or you're adding it on, you want to cut a length of yarn that is 3 times at least the length of from your neck down your sleeve. So the distance that you will be grafting or Kitchener stitching, you want to make sure that your tail or your yarn here is at least 3 times. So for me, it would be, let's see, 1 and 2 and then 3, and then I always give myself a little bit more. So if I wanted to, I could cut off, if I can get this over here, that little extra, because I won't need it. Okay, so I give myself the correct length of yarn, 3 times and a little bit more. I'm also using a bent tip tapestry needle to work this technique. Okay, so I'm going to read directly from the instructions, so that way I don't word anything differently than what I've written down. So this is the back of my sweater, and this represents the front of my sweater. So what we will do is we will hold both of these stitches on their needle together, and we'll put those in our left hand. Now the right side of my fabric is facing me. All of this is done with the right side facing me, okay? And so the instructions tell me to take my yarn and join it to the first stitch on the back needle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into that stitch as if to knit, and I'm going to leave myself a little tiny tail there and just leave that on, okay? And I've cut my length of yarn to be like 3 and a bit, 4 times the width, whatever you want it to be, just that you want enough, okay? And now we're going to jump into the Kitchener stitch. So I come to the front needle and I'm going to go into the first stitch purlwise. So I go into the first stitch as if to purl. I'm going to pull that all the way through and I'm going to leave that on my needle. Now I'm going to go into the first stitch knitwise on the back needle. All right, knitwise on the back needle. And I'm going to leave that on. Okay. Now I'm on step 3, and this is where we will continue doing repeats. Back here on my first needle, we're going to go into the first stitch as if to knit, onto the front needle and off. Go into the next stitch on your front needle as if to purl and leave it on. Okay, you with me so far? Now we're going to come back here to the back needle. We're going to go into this first stitch on the back needle. We're going to go in purlwise and we're going to take that off. Go into the next stitch on our back needle and go in knitwise, go in as if to knit, and we'll leave that stitch on. Give these a nice little tug as you're doing it, okay? You're going to create a knit stitch here is what we're doing. Now we come back to the front. We go in to the front needle as if to knit and take it off, pull your yarn through. Go into the next stitch on your front needle as if to purl and leave it on. Excuse me. Now we go back to the back needle. First stitch on our back needle, go in as if to purl and take it off. On the next stitch on the back needle, go in as if to knit and leave it on. You just keep repeating this. So we knit, off, purl, on the front. On the back, we purl, off, knit, on. And you do this all the way down. Can you see how we're starting to create some knit stitches here? See the off color there? We're creating those knits. Let's do a couple more. Knit, off on the front, purl, on the front. Purl, off on the back, knit, on the back. You see that? Let's keep going here. Knit off on the front, purl on the front, purl off on the back, knit on the back. And every time you want to make sure your yarn's coming underneath your needles here. We'll do this again. Knit off, purl on. Take your time doing this, okay? You do not want to have this mess up. Then we purl off on the back, knit on the back. I'm going to push these up on the needle a little bit here and see if you can see how the grafting is starting to look. Can you see the different color there? That will be the top of my sweater, okay? Now, I have chosen to do this sort of finish at the top of the sweater, but if you want to bind off all your stitches and join using the mattress stitch, you could absolutely do that. I will leave that up to you, but I thought this looked like a nice join at the top of the sweater. I just thought it looked nice, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You could absolutely do grafting or that look nice. But you don't have to do the Kitchener stitch. If you want to do the mattress stitch, you could do that. I hesitate to say doing the whip stitch at the shoulder seam because that's where it's really going to hold a lot of weight. And I don't really trust the whip stitch at the top of my shoulders. So I wouldn't do that. So I would choose either the Kitchener stitch or the mattress stitch, but I will leave the choice up to you. Just know that if you choose to use the mattress stitch at the top of your shoulders, you will have to bind all of these off first before you join doing the mattress stitch. Now, speaking of mattress stitch, that is what I wrote for you guys to do underneath your sleeve. So you have those few stitches to work together underneath your sleeve using the mattress stitch. In that situation, if you wanted to use a whip stitch, you absolutely could. I will leave it up to you, but let's take a look at how to do the mattress stitch, okay? Now let's talk about the mattress stitch. By the time you're ready for the mattress stitch for the underneath the sleeve, the top of your sweater will be seamed together, okay? So that will be seamed together. So I still have needles in mine, but you won't have that. That will all be seamed. And you'll have this bottom section down here to deal with, okay? It's not too many stitches, right? You didn't add a whole lot of extra stitches unless you made alterations. It's not that many stitches. And so what we're going to do is we're going to match up stitch for stitch from the front to the back and essentially simulate creating a new knit stitch. But what you will notice if you curve these in just like so, you'll notice that the knits meet up together and the cables all meet up together. Everything looks really good, right? Okay, so one thing I want to suggest is when you're doing your grafting, I would join your yarn, and the same rules apply. You want to have about three and a bit or 4 times the total distance you plan on grafting. You want to join your yarn, and I would join it down by wherever your armpit area is, okay? I would not join it down here at the edge where your sleeve is. Let that be the last bit you put together, because the armpit area, that's all going to be hidden, right? It's in your armpit. So what I want to do is I want to begin seaming these together, starting at my armpit and with the right side facing me. We're going to join these stitches together with the right side facing. And if you remember, I told you guys to use the long tail cast on for casting on those stitches for your sleeve. The reason I like the long tail cast on is for the very reason of putting the mattress stitch into use. The long tail cast on gives us a knit row that we can then somewhat easily graft into, so that way we have a pretty nice join together, okay? So as I fold these together, I want to graft this stitch over here to this stitch over here, all right? So just to get us started, I'm gonna just pull my yarn from underneath, and I'm gonna leave myself a little tail so I can weave that in later. And I'm gonna come up, and literally I'm going to come underneath my stitch right there. Let me pull this through here. You won't have those needles there getting in your way like I do, but hopefully this will work out well for you guys to see. And what I will do is over here on the corresponding side, I'm going to work my way through the stitch over here. So I go through one leg of the stitch before it, one leg of the stitch in between it. All right, so it's like you split stitches on one side and you go underneath a full stitch over here. And that's like how you graft it together. So I come back over here, I go in where I came out, and I go underneath the full stitch. See how there's a V there? Can you see the V? Pull that through. Come over here, go in where you came out. Go so you have a V there as well. See how it looks like an upside down V? This one looks like it's a right side up. And create your stitch. Come in where you came out. Come across. So you're going behind your stitch. Come up here, go in where you came out. go behind. Now it gets a little tricky here because you have these purls, but just find the knit bar underneath it. Pull out. Come back over here, in where you came out. See how you have the V right there? Come up here, in where you came out. There's my V right there. And what you're gonna look at here, it looks like you have this zigzag stitch, right? So as you're doing that, and you pull it closed, see how I just pulled both ends? See how that looks rather seamless coming together? Everything comes together really nicely, okay? Just to kind of give you a little bit more of a visual, if you think about it, we have, let's see, we have our stitches here, right? And we're meeting them up with stitches over here. So these ones, we essentially want to meet up like this. So what will happen, I don't know if this blue pen will show up, but you essentially are coming up, coming down, coming around, going like that all the way through. So this here, this blue, this represents the string that I was just threading through all of those sections, top to bottom. So when I pull that closed, that cinches all of this up. I love the Mattress Stitch. I think it's a wonderful stitch to learn, and this is a really easy one to use it on because it's stitches to stitches. We aren't combining like stitches to rows by any way. It's stitches to stitches. So just one for one, connect it up, go all the way down your sleeve. So start at your armpit, go all the way down your sleeve, start at your armpit, go all the way down your sleeve. And once you've done that, you guys, your sweater is done. Now, you do have a choice to wash and block it at that point. Some of you will do that, some of you will not. But if you want to learn how to wash and block, I do have videos for that right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Or if you are part of the VIP experience, go and watch that video right there inside your course. All right, everybody, that's how you make the Sazerac sweater. I hope you enjoyed this make-along, and you will consider joining me for future make-alongs. Maybe for the Breckenridge sweater that I'm wearing right here. It's a lot of fun to make and super duper easy. Once you've made this one, you can make anything. I know you can. It's just sticks and string, you guys. Give yourself a little bit of patience and a lot of coffee and some breaks, and you will have an amazing sweater to add to your collection. Make sure as you're working along, take pictures and share with me on social media. I love seeing your work. And until next time, everybody, I'm your By Crafty bestie, and I am always here to teach you everything that I possibly know about knitting and crochet. I'll see you again very soon.